Record. You're up, Carolyn.
Hello. I thank everyone for coming to our Toastmasters podcast. We meet here every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Our guest speaker for the day is going to be none other than Robert Ortiz. He has an unknown subject matter that I'm not sure what it is, but he is going to be our speaker for today.
Actually, it's on the agenda, so we're good to go.
Well, I didn't. When did you send out the agenda?
It was pretty late. It was pretty late.
Yeah, if you send
It's
it out
always,
today.
Yeah, it was always last minute. I thought I did
Yeah.
it last week, but I guess I didn't save it.
That's right. You're good to go, Robert.
I'm
Yeah,
good
you
to
can
go.
introduce yourself and tell us what you're speaking about.
Rightio. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And whoever's going to watch this, hello, I'm Robert Ortiz, and today we are going to talk about Toastmasters and the change of time, change of venue. Toastmasters has been around since the early 1900s, and it has helped thousands and perhaps even millions of people, just countless. And since that time, Toastmasters has used, I believe, the current agenda that we have today. Along with that agenda, we have typically used the same type of promotional marketing strategies, the same type of training, and the list goes on and on. A typical agenda for us would be the introduction. For those who are not Toastmasters, a typical agenda would be an introduction, perhaps an education moment, a description of the roles, such as a Toastmaster or a host, a timer, a grammarian, table topics master, and any other speakers as well, evaluations. And in every one of those roles, it is pretty much the same throughout all of the clubs in the world. Now, there may be a little bit of changes, little creativity here and there, but for the most part, it stays on cue with the traditional Toastmasters agenda. Each meeting usually lasts 1 hour to an hour and a half, perhaps even longer. Although I've personally never been involved with one longer than an hour and a half, but I'm sure they're out there somewhere. Some of the challenges that we have with Toastmasters is be able to use those public speaking skills that we've acquired over many, many years. Another challenge is club visibility. For some reason, just the way Toastmasters is being presented, it's just not getting out there to get new members, a new audience. And the marketing is pretty limited as well. Because normally speaking, yes, we have Facebook, there's a Twitter, and there are some classes, officers training using YouTube. But I don't recall ever seeing what I'm going to introduce here soon. One of the most challenging aspects of Toastmasters is scheduling speakers. For some reason, people don't like to speak. Not all the time. It depends on the participation of your club. So we're going to see if we can change all of that. And what we did here at Talents Unlimited as a project, and I was leading the project, and I had the utmost support and participation of our Toastmasters Talents Unlimited club members, such as Jim Kearney, our president, Carolyn Moore, our education vice president for Turner, and others within within Talents Unlimited Toastmasters Club. So we were all on board with this. It was something new, something that we were a little bit unsure of. But nevertheless, we pushed forward, we scheduled some meetings, we kind of ironed out some of the quirks. We had assignments to certain individuals. For example, Jim and I worked together on the script, and then other individuals also worked on that script as well. There were revisions made to our agenda. So we had shortened the agenda considerably because a typical podcast was about 38 to 41 minutes. Anything longer than that, we were going to start losing an audience. That was from the research that I was able to gather that information about. So what are the benefits of a podcast? Well, public speaking availability. Because we have a podcast, our public speaking is a little bit easier to fulfill because we're having conversations on a topic that we choose. Now, granted, those topics have to fall in line with pathways in order to be able to receive credit. But this particular venue allows us to use those public speaking skills to not just our club members, but to the audience out in the world of the internet. It also allows us to reach to a global audience. Some of these topics of discussion that we had, as a matter of fact, about 3 weeks ago, we had a discussion on economics, in which Jim Kearney was able to provide some valuable information in the world of economics and the possible scenarios that may be occurring or are occurring currently. So these type of topics of discussion allows others who may have a peak of interest to come join us here at Talents Unlimited Toastmasters Podcast in order for them to be able to participate. And there are going to be many, many, many other topics of discussion that will hopefully spark some interest in our club activities and gather potentially more members. One of the freedoms that we have, as I mentioned, is to be able to choose topics of our own. And that really allows us sometimes to get into the topic of the day. Some Toastmasters clubs are current events. Some may have a particular agenda for this and that, but our theme is open-ended for conversation. Conversation is the key here at Talents Unlimited. One of the key points of this, and we all agreed on within our club, is building that relationship with our audience. Although there may not be too many people who actually join our audience live, there are numerous amount of individuals who view this podcast and are able to view it at a time of their choosing or listen however they decide they want to partake in listening to our show. So building that relationship is one thing that we're striving to do that. And how do we do that? By speaking in public. And we all agreed, as part of this new venue, as part of this collective consensus, that this is the new venue that we would like to go. One of the key takeaways that we all agreed upon, and we learned over the past 5 or 6 podcasts, was how natural it is to speak. We're not always cueing in on ahs and ums and double starts, and some I'm fairly guilty of. But being able to use this particular platform we all found out that it was more natural to talk, and those particular items of a little bit of imperfection, we're able to overcome just by having a natural conversation, like a cup of coffee sitting across the table, even though some of our members are across the country. Another benefit of the podcast that we all found beneficial and we all agreed upon as part of this project is the expertise in the topics of discussion. As I mentioned, Jim spoke about economics and the monetary system. So there's a lot of expert, or at least a little bit more expert, not advice, but a little bit more special interest by a speaker who wants to present a certain topic, because it may pique their interest. And speaking of their interest, they're able to present their interest to the audience with a little bit more education than some of us may be exposed to in that particular topic. Another benefit of having this forum, even though the Toastmasters website provides it, and we do enter that information, is all of these speeches are documented. All of the table topics are documented. The attentive listening is documented. Everything that could possibly be beneficial to advance in your pathways is documented by this particular venue and posting this for the benefit of our audience. So there are some benefits, indirect, but nevertheless, it's there to document where we are going and how we are developing as a club. One of the key takeaways from a speech, just like tonight, or a presentation, is what we call table topics. As I mentioned, in a typical agenda, we have table topics. And one of the key takeaways is that our host can ask questions to the audience about the presentation or the conversation that was presented. So we could take those takeaways, and in which he or she would ask those questions to the audience, in which at that point in time, the audience has to do the improv answers to the question that was presented by the host. So those table topics is not off the hook. It's there. You better be ready, because if you come to this Toastmasters meeting podcast, you're not off the hook. Everyone is going to participate, and we would encourage that interaction. We encourage that conversation. We encourage that impromptu speaking, because public speaking and what the world and how we interact with the world on a daily basis comes into play. We have created 5 or 6 podcasts at this time, and the potential is unimaginable of the audiences that we are reaching out to and the audiences that may view this. And to those that are actually watching this podcast, I encourage you to join us. Come join the conversation. There may be something here for you to get involved in the Toastmasters, to be able to carry a conversation across the tables at your favorite coffee shop or personal relationships. The last thing you want to do is not be able to have that conversation. So those are the benefits of this venue. The key takeaways: public speaking, ongoing, weekly, more natural, cup of coffee environment, and a nice, relaxed venue. That's what we are doing here at Talents Unlimited. Thank you, Madam Host.
Thank you, Robert, for that enlightening presentation. So the question we're going to ask today is, Jim, how do you feel about the podcast? Do you think it has enhanced your speaking?
I tell you, it's a lot more fun. I clearly Toastmasters is designed to allow people to speak conversationally. I mean, if you're going to get out there and talk, you don't want to talk at the audience. You want to talk with the audience. That's the only way to garner a relationship and make them part of it. Your audience will always remember how you made them feel versus everything that you say. So I think this conversation piece is probably a better way to go.
Okay, Flora, do you find that the topics that we have had so far has been entertaining or interesting to hold your attention?
Yes, I do think that the topics that we've spoken about, Robert talked to us one podcast about losing weight and keeping our bodies healthy. And we talked about finances. We talked about something fun like football. And we just been talking on and on about current events. So yes, learning to speak through a podcast, yes, I'm enjoying it, and I hope that we will get farther into it, because that is one of the benefits Robert was talking about in Pathways. Toastmasters want us to learn how to do podcasting, and they are encouraging us to do it. So we've just stepped out on the limb to begin this at this time.
Okay, Robert, how do you feel about the subjects that we have talked about so far?
Absolutely wonderful. With being able to present a topic, it brings in enlightenment from a different perspective, not only on a topic, but just what's happening in the world of our members. What's happening in their world? What is so interesting? And having that presentation or an introduction from a club member gives us a little bit of insight of them, and it gives us an education as well. And that's how I look at it. I enjoy every moment of the podcast. It gets away from the same, although very, very important, the same old, same old.
You just made me think of something.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. You know what, Carolyn, have you ever seen the commercials, the most interesting man commercials? And Robert was going on about that, and I'm sitting here talking to myself, well, you know, I led a real interesting life. I've been a bouncer, I've been a bartender, I was in the Navy, I was working in a psych hospital, bouncing people off walls and putting them in straitjackets. I mean, I've been all over. Martial arts instructor, bowling coach. There's all sorts of stories. You think I could probably fill this bookcase with my own stories.
So Jim, do we have a real most interesting man in the world?
Hey, you never know. There's a lot of things that are going on. I sat here and I thought about what you were saying, and I'm saying, well, you know what? I wonder if I would start talking about how I did this in martial arts. Oh, maybe my next speech should be about how I was a bowling coach and I scored a perfect game at the most opportune time. I mean, there's all sorts of different stories that could go on. That would be a lot of fun.
Yes, we can talk about many different stories. Now, Jim, I very seldom watch commercials. I am a Netflix person because they have no commercials. So I would want to watch anything or anything that doesn't have a commercial. I used to tape things so that I could fast forward through the commercials. So I'm not a fan of commercials, but I know they serve a purpose. And a lot of people do like commercials. I'm just not one of them. But I
Not
think
even,
that the
I'm
go ahead,
sorry, go ahead.
Robert.
Not
Go ahead.
even, not even during the Super Bowl?
I do watch those. I do not find them as interesting, as funny as people say they are. I'm a little bit more critical because to me, commercials is to sell something. And being a salesperson, it's hard to sell me. So that's how I feel about it. So I watched some of the commercials, but like the commercials last year, those were some terrible. A few of them was good, but for the most part, because a lot of those commercials had professional actors in those commercials. So I mean, I'm a little critical about commercials, and I guess because we're kind of in the industry, my family is in the industry. Um, I I kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. So it's not you have to kind of look past that. So it's for entertainment purposes, but I know it's not real. So that's just me.
Now you can tell this is a podcast. We
Yes,
we
yes.
we went from Toastmasters International to speaking commercials.
Now, one show that I do like while we're talking about commercials, and I don't know if y'all watched it, but I've watched all of them. I think they're funny. Is the little boy is the Chucky. Chucky is the doll that comes alive, and
Yep.
Rat and Rat Rabbit.
Rex Havoc. Yep.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be scary, but I find it kind of comical. Being in a house that has a lot of dolls. Just think if the dolls came alive.
I think
That's
one of the takeaways that I have with this venue is being able to speak like we are to the public. Just imagine for 1 second, perhaps the three of us sitting at a coffee shop having this conversation. As Jim has mentioned, the art of speaking amongst at a personal level and having it come across naturally professionally as well. I think that it's quite beneficial to have this venue available to us.
I'm sure it is. By golly, that's why we started this.
That's right. Exactly. And it took everybody. It took a buy-in from everybody. Even though Martin's not here this evening, he gave us some critique and some valuable input. And Jim, I cannot convey the amount of work that you put in revising our script and narrowing it down. Now it's to the point, I believe, that we really don't even use a script because we know how it's going to break out when we
Well,
have this
That's the whole
venue.
point, right? That's
Yes.
that's where you want to go, right?
Yes.
So it's
yes,
good. It's
exactly.
good. I mean, you write the script to get started, and then since everyone's working it, you're all working the same language, so you end up changing and it becomes normal and regular. So
Mhm.
all the good for us. Now we need to do post-production work, which we haven't talked about before. Right? So in the post-production work, you want to re-advertise these meetings that are going on, right? Because you want to draw people to the website and get them interested so that we grow the club and more people come in and join us and have a little more fun. But with all businesses, if you don't advertise, you're not going to get customers.
Correct.
So we need to do that advertising.
One of the key takeaways of this particular pathway, and this is the completion, the key takeaway for me in this particular pathway, and it's innovative planning. For those who are not here today, Toastmasters offer a great many pathways to educate you. And by the way, it is one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, education that you're going to get to develop in your personal and professional life. But the key takeaways I've had during this whole adventure in innovative planning is the planning, is the attentive listening, is an icebreaker speech. Each pathway has a different icebreaker, an opportunity to give an icebreaker to give a little bit more about yourself. And every one of those pathways, every level provide, and the electives, provides us that opportunity to do that. And there was a great deal I learned about myself. As an example, leadership. I've given presentations about how the mind works from a psychological standpoint with respect to leadership, how a person thinks. And listening to all of you in your pathway journeys and the takeaways that you've given that you were able to provide feedback from. But for me, this particular pathway, the takeaways, including this last one, which was probably the most challenging because we chose as a group to go in a whole different direction. And we were able to meet that challenge. So it's just a process of us taking it and going even further. And your post-production thoughts and your ideas, Jim. So those are my takeaways, not only for this assignment, but my takeaways from the whole path itself. But I can't wait, Jim, to hear about your post-production ideas.
All right, well, we'll have to get into that later on. Let me give you some feedback on your speech, right? Because I thought it was fairly interesting. I like the way that you laid out the problems. You sat there and talked about all the different things in Toastmasters that you see and why it was necessary for us as a group to do something different. You didn't mention that the whole idea was to set this club apart from other clubs in order to bring something unique, right? Which was of course the driving factor behind it. But it's good that you brought the idea out, right? Because you listed the problems and we came up with a rather unique way of trying to solve it. So I thought that was great. And you went through all the different benefits, especially the part about the conversation and turning around and getting to the world audience. I really liked it when you honed in on the point about building relationships. To me, this is what Toastmasters is all about. It's the fact that you're trying to build a relationship between you, the speaker, and us, the audience. And by speaking and talking with the audience rather than at the audience, it has a huge difference in the effect that the audience receives the information from. The messaging is totally different. So I thought that's really, really done. There are a couple of things I want to ask you to improve upon. And number one, you've heard before, the bebopping of the head.
Okay.
So it kind of distracts me when you do it because your head seems to be wobbling. You know, like on the car dashboard where you have the little man and it goes like this, right?
the bobblehead.
Yeah. So sometimes that it becomes distracting because I'm trying to coordinate your movements with the words that you're saying and they're not matching when the head is doing that, right? And you also had the problem with the hand gestures. Now, mine is different. So I like to stand up and show my hand gestures, and when I do that, they block the face, right? But yours are down here, and I see the tips of your fingers and stuff, right? So
Okay.
somewhere between halfway between me and you, there's a happy medium point where you can see the faces. So something we might want to try to watch about. Overall, though, I thought that the speech was really good. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the way that we put it out there, and I really like the idea of doing this on a consistent basis and building relationships not only between us and the audience, but also trying to reach out and get other people to come in and have them join us. So I think that the post-production stuff we were talking about is probably something we need to look into. And the meeting itself. This is an awesome venue. I can't thank Carolyn and Flora enough to say that, oh, we need to try something different. And we ended up pushing this out there. We flew by the seat of our pants to make it happen, but this is awesome. This is so much fun. It's so much easier to have a conversation between the whole audience after the speech and throwing ideas back and forth. It becomes a whole new learning experience in the way we express ourselves and talk to each other. I think this meeting was great and it was well done. And I hope that we continue on improving. And with that, I would like to give it back to Carolyn and have her tell us more about what we're going to do next.
Thank you, Jim. You want to stop the recording?
Sure.